Ever think about what happens, like, beyond the battlefield? We hear so much about the bravery and sacrifice of those in uniform. But what about the families? The families holding down the fort back home. You know their journey. It's got its own set of salutes, but also its own scars.
Right.
And that's where we're diving in today.
Yeah.
You sent us a really interesting collection of materials on military welfare workers.
Mm-hmm.
A career path, I'll be honest, I don't know a ton about.
Yeah, it's one of those kind of behind-the-scenes roles.
Totally.
Yeah.
But we've got insights from RoleCatcher, some personal stories, even some stats on what it takes to really thrive in this field.
It's a tough job.
So our mission, to uncover what these professionals really do, the impact they have, and maybe, just maybe, see if this could be your calling.
Absolutely. It's a career path that's so essential, but often overlooked.
Okay, so let's unpack that. The RoleCatcher Guide. It kicks things off with a pretty straightforward definition, supporting families throughout, like, the entire deployment cycle. But I gotta say, I'm drawn to the human side of this.
Yeah.
How does that definition actually play out?
Well, and that's what's so fascinating here. The military is all about structure and hierarchy,
Right.
but the role of a military welfare worker, incredibly nuanced. It's navigating a complex web of emotional needs, societal expectations,
Yeah.
and the ever-present impact of military life on families and veterans.
Okay, let's break that down a bit.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to say, okay, we're prepping families for deployment. But it's quite another to actually be there, to
Yeah.
empathize, with a spouse who's facing months of solo parenting.
Oh, absolutely.
Or a child trying to cope with the uncertainty of having a parent in a danger zone.
Yeah, and those are really tough conversations to have.
And the guide doesn't shy away from the tough stuff either. They talk about supporting teenagers,
Mm-hmm.
dealing with separation anxiety, fear, even resentment. And I'm thinking to myself, how do you even begin to unpack those emotions with a young person whose world has been completely turned upside down?
It takes a remarkable blend of professional expertise and just genuine human connection. This isn't about, checking boxes on a checklist. You're meeting people where they are emotionally, and often that means dealing with some incredibly raw and complex feelings.
And it's not just about when the serving member is away, right?
No, not at all.
The guide also goes into the reintegration process.
Right.
Veterans returning home, families readjusting, everybody trying to find their footing again.
And honestly, that can be just as, if not more challenging than the deployment itself.
How so?
Well, imagine you're returning from a combat zone, potentially dealing with trauma, and now you have to reintegrate into a family dynamic that has, inevitably shifted in your absence. It's a huge adjustment for everyone involved.
It makes you realize why the guide puts so much emphasis on social perceptiveness, active listening, and empathy. These aren't just buzzwords, are they?
Not at all. Those are the essential tools you need to build trust and rapport in these situations.
Yeah.
Because often military welfare workers are walking into situations where individuals and families are already carrying a heavy load, stress, anxiety, maybe even past traumas. So being able to pick up on subtle cues, to truly listen and empathize, that can make all the difference in creating a safe space for them to open up.
It makes you realize this is really intense work, right? It's not just about, having a big heart, though I'm sure that's crucial.
Oh, absolutely.
But it takes a resilient spirit. And the guide doesn't sugarcoat that. It really talks about the emotional toll this work can take.
Exactly. You're constantly exposed to other people's pain, their struggles.
Right.
You're celebrating victories with them one moment and then helping them through heartbreak the next. It takes a special kind of strength to be that steady presence for people, that source of support, without getting, completely overwhelmed yourself.
It's like you were saying earlier, this is more of a calling than just a job.
Yeah.
And the guide even mentions that. The opportunity to work with a tight-knit community, it says.
Right, and that's a big part of it.
And I can see how that would be so fulfilling, that sense of shared purpose, belonging to something larger.
Absolutely. And that feeling, it goes beyond just the military itself. You're often collaborating with a whole network of support, military hospitals, counseling services, community organizations.
Wow.
All these people working together to address these really complex needs.
Speaking of complex needs, one thing I thought was surprising in the guide was the mention of technology advances, which I honestly wouldn't have put together with the military right away.
Yeah.
Like online support groups, digital counseling.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But then it's like, of course.
It makes perfect sense when you think about it because, like so many other fields, this one is having to adapt to the changing world, too.
Totally.
Online platforms can bridge the distance for deployed families, They can offer anonymity
Well, that's huge.
for people who might, not feel comfortable seeking help in person. And it can even provide resources in remote locations where access to those services is limited.
It's like technology is adding a whole other layer to that support network we were talking about.
Exactly, exactly. And, it's not meant to replace those face-to-face interactions. Those are still crucial.
Yeah.
But it's about expanding the ways in which support can be accessed, can be delivered.
So let's bring this back to you listening for a second. We've explored what military welfare work is and why it matters. But the guide also asks this question. Is this your calling?
Right. Big question.
And they don't really sugarcoat it. This is a demanding path.
It is. And it's not enough to simply want to help people.
True.
You need the emotional intelligence. You need the resilience, the self-awareness, all those things we've been talking about to actually navigate the challenges that come with this line of work.
They really emphasize, I noticed, the importance of getting your feet wet. Volunteering at veterans organizations, interning at counseling centers, even pursuing related fields like social work to gain some experience.
Yeah, there's no substitute for firsthand experience.
Would you say that's crucial, even for someone who's just considering this?
Absolutely. Because it allows you to test your assumptions about the work, to try out your skills, and really figure out, most importantly, your emotional capacity. Can you handle the often intense situations you're going to encounter?
Yeah, it's about more than just checking boxes on a resume. It's about really understanding if this is a good fit for you.
Exactly.
And speaking of resumes, the guide lays out a pretty clear path. A bachelor's in a related field is usually the starting point.
Right. Your psychology, your social work, those sorts of things.
But then it's all about building that specialized skill set.
Exactly. Think about certifications in things like military family life consulting or trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy or grief counseling. These aren't just fancy titles. These represent specialized knowledge and training that can really make a difference.
So you're saying it's really this continuous learning process, even once you're in the field.
Absolutely. Because the landscape of military support, the needs of those who serve, even the resources available, it's all constantly evolving. To thrive in this field, you need to be committed to your own professional development just as much as you are to the well-being of those you're supporting.
It speaks to that dedication, that deep-seated passion that the guide talks about.
Yeah.
And I love that they included this example profile of an entry-level worker, just someone starting out, but already making a difference. Brings the whole thing to life.
It really does. And it shows you don't need decades of experience to have a real impact. That fresh perspective can be just as valuable, especially when it's paired with those right skills and that commitment to service.
And that example, it just highlights how much this career blends the personal and the professional. The guide even says, the importance of building genuine relationships, being really embedded in the community. This isn't clocking in and clocking out.
Not at all. It becomes a part of you.
It's becoming a part of something so much bigger than yourself.
Absolutely. And I think that sense of purpose, of being that trusted resource, that's a big part of why people stay in these roles. Because it can be tough. We've talked about the emotional toll, but knowing you're contributing to something meaningful, that makes a difference.
There's a quote from the guide that comes to mind. It's the career stages section. And it talks about this, deep satisfaction of witnessing the resilience of military families firsthand.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine being a part of those journeys, those moments of growth and healing?
It's incredibly powerful, and it just speaks volumes about the empathy and emotional intelligence these professionals have, because they're not just providing a service, they're right there alongside these individuals, these families going through some really, really tough experiences.
Which brings me to this. For anyone listening who's feeling drawn to this, maybe they love the idea of service, of making a difference. What's the one thing you'd want them to take away from our conversation today?
Beyond the degrees, beyond the certifications, really take some time to reflect on your why.
Your why.
Yeah. Why this work? What is it that truly motivates you to want to support those who serve? Because that inner drive, that sense of purpose, that's going to be your anchor, especially when things get tough, because we've seen they do get tough.
So well said. It's about more than checking boxes. It's about finding that alignment between your skills, your values, and the needs of these families, this community, and recognizing that, the job title might be military welfare worker, but the heart of it, the real essence, it's those human connections. It's about making a real impact on the lives of those who have sacrificed so much.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And for those who do answer that call, they become part of this incredible legacy of support, of resilience, of unwavering dedication. It's really quite remarkable.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this thought. Next time you encounter a veteran, a military family, maybe you just see a story on the news,
Mm-hmm.
remember that huge network of support that's often hidden behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a testament to the human spirit, the power of compassion, that belief that even in the face of adversity, hope and healing are always possible. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. And until next time, keep asking those questions, keep exploring, and please keep those insightful sources coming our way.